5 years since the first COVID-19 case was announced here at home in East Texas. The day our region became part of a global pandemic. Tonight, KLTV7's Blake Holland takes a look back.
Late yesterday afternoon, Dr. Brown reported a COVID-19 case had been confirmed by the Center for Disease Control.
5 years ago today, Gregg County Judge Bill Stout announced the first case of COVID-19 in East Texas.
Please know the individual in question did not contract the virus within our community and has been in self-isolation for the past 2 weeks.
It was a news conference that may seem strange looking back. A packed room in the times before we ever heard of social distancing and wearing masks.
And we know that they have contacts that have been exposed.
Just a few days later, we would learn of more cases in Smith County and hear for the first time about efforts to flatten the curve.
We're in for a marathon now versus a sprint. We don't know how long it's going to take.
About 15 days after that first confirmed case, we would learn of the first death in East Texas.
George, have there been any COVID-related deaths in Smith County?
Yes, there have been. There's been one related death. We're going to be pushing that out today. As a matter of fact, it's a 91-year-old male who is a Smith County resident.
As the weeks and months went on, daily life came to a halt. Schools closed, events were canceled, and testing ramped up.
The issuance of this order is not a license for personal recklessness.
We eventually saw orders that closed businesses and kept people at home.
Let's pause for 2 weeks of our life, and we will be so proud of ourselves after we have that pause.
But what experts thought would take weeks to do would take much longer.
And people who think it's a hoax should come see the folks on the ventilator laying face down trying to breathe through a machine.
There has been a swift and a substantial spike in COVID-19 cases.
In summer 2020, cases spiked and the governor issued a mask mandate. Partial reopenings would come in September.
If the COVID hospitalizations are less than 15% of all hospitalizations for 7 consecutive days, then the region is safe enough to allow additional openings.
And while cases were down, they went back up and stayed that way through the holidays. But that's also when vaccines arrived in East Texas. Today that they have been waiting on and preparing for since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic.
It's not something I would recommend somebody get, so go and get the vaccine.
Tyler and Longview would soon become vaccine hubs, providing shots to thousands of East Texans.
They've waited patiently. They want their shot now.
5 years later, the reminders of the impact COVID had remain. Whether it's the memory of those we lost or the health lessons learned from dealing with the pandemic and the resilience of East Texans who fought tough cases but lived to tell their story.
I wasn't supposed to get out of the hospital. They gave me like a 2% chance of getting out of the hospital in 2021.
I call him my miracle because he is. When you're watching someone die, you grieve that. You miss them, and I have my husband back.
Blake Holland, KLTV7 News.
Today also marks 5 years since COVID was declared a global pandemic.